Hey there VCHHD students, my name's Andy, I'm a VC Health and Human Development teacher. In this short video we're going to look at answering the 2019 VCHHD exam, question number 5. Just a reminder, the Health Resources Hub YouTube channel has a new video like this one coming out each day between now and the HHD exam at the end of this year. You can subscribe with the button in the bottom corner of the video there, and please let your other HHD friends know to do so too. You can sign up to the ACED HHD exam preparation lectures I'm running in the September holidays at book.acedvc.com. You can see our social media links there if you'd like to follow us and get alerts to new videos coming out each day, as well as exam tips. And you can email us at info@thehrh.net.au if you've got any questions or suggestions of videos you'd like me to work on. So question number 5 in the 2019 exam was the extended response question, which was worth 10 marks. You can see here it mentioned that you needed to consider the following 3 sources relating to HIV/AIDS. And so you can see here source number 1 was the global annual AIDS deaths and new infections from 2000 to 2015 in millions. And so whenever there's data like this, you should always look at both axes. So obviously over here on the y-axis, it's representing millions, and then on the x-axis, the years. And there's also a key here. So you can see here, the first part of the key is looking at AIDS-related deaths for all ages. And so if you look at the data here, that kind of peaked around 2006 and then started declining. This second point here, okay, is new HIV infections for adults and children. So that was slowly trending down. And then third solid line here was new HIV infections, and that was also sort of trending down to around 2008 and then started to plateau. So that was the first piece of data to consider. The second source here, okay, was an infographic that mentioned that every minute of every day a girl aged between 15 to 24 years gets HIV in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's a whole subset of countries, okay, below the Sahara in Africa. So that was your second source. It's obviously important to note here that they're focusing on the fact that they're a girl, okay, that's contracting HIV, okay, between 15 to 24 every minute, okay, of every day. And then source 3 was also focusing, okay, on a girl, okay, Mosia, who lived in rural Tanzania with her 60-year-old grandmother and 3 younger brothers. So essentially the stimulus material mentioned that both of her parents died from AIDS complications due to the lack of access to antiretroviral medication, which is a medication that can help to treat, okay, HIV and AIDS. And so mentioned that she was an orphan with her brothers and she was now living with her grandma. And then at the age of 15, due to poverty, okay, she'd been forced to leave school and work to work at the local coffee plantation, with the income she was earning sufficient to meet the family's basic needs. But her and her grandmother need to grow additional vegetables to supplement the family's diet to sell at the local village market, with that money being raised to pay for her brother's school materials. And she is fortunate as other girls in her village have been forced to work in the sex industry. So whenever you see different sources, okay, in the extended response, you should be thinking in your mind, how can I possibly connect these together? So obviously this is, as well as the other stimulus material, referring to HIV/AIDS, but the fact that source 2 was about a girl, this is focusing on a girl as well. You need to be making some of those connections in your mind as you're looking at the source material. You can see here, okay, the question was using the information provided and your understanding of the key features of SDG 3, analyze how addressing the HIV/AIDS epidemic can lead to an improvement in health and well-being and the achievement of one other SDG. Now, I've done a previous video on breaking down sources and questions for extended response, so I'd go back and take a look at that if you haven't already. But you can see there's quite a few parts to this question here. So using the information provided means that you need to refer to all 3 sources of stimulus material if you're looking for a really high mark. Obviously, there's a focus on the key features of SDG 3. And then this part of the question is really important. Analyze how addressing the HIV/AIDS epidemic. So you need to understand that addressing means doing something about it or making improvements in relation to this epidemic. And so how can that lead to an improvement in health and well-being? So that's obviously the dimensions of health and well-being there, and the achievement of one other SDG. So they're talking about one other than just SDG 3. So you've got to think about the other SDGs that you've learnt, and how could addressing the HIV/AIDS epidemic lead to improvements in that SDG as well. So there's multiple parts to that question there, and obviously you need to think about a logical way of setting out your answer to address all of these to try to achieve full marks in, okay, the exam at the end of the year. You can see here from the examiner's report that They said 0% were able to achieve 10 marks. Now that doesn't mean no students, but obviously a very small number of students, okay, would have achieved 10 marks for this particular question, but not enough to even register, okay, 0.1 or something on this data here. So you can see there, even in the 7, 8, 9 category, okay, not even sort of 2% of students were able to achieve that. As for all, okay, extended response questions, this would be marked using a rubric, okay, and it's really looking at the interplay between how well students are able to incorporate the stimulus material and related concepts together. So that's about sort of linking everything together in your response. Obviously for this one, you're talking about supporting the analysis of how addressing the HIV AIDS epidemic could lead to improvement in health and well-being and an SDG beside SDG 3. You had to mention key features of SDG 3 and how your response is structured for clarity and coherence, okay? So in the examiner's report, okay, they also sort of mentioned some common errors, and a big one here is that students often focused on how there were negative aspects associated with HIV AIDS, but the question was clearly focusing on analysing how addressing, okay, so reducing the HIV AIDS epidemic could help to achieve health and well-being benefits as well as another SDG. So you really need to focus on what the question is, I guess the way in which the question is leading you to make sure that your response, okay, is in the right context. Otherwise, you could lose a lot of marks if you're referring to, I guess, almost the opposite context of what the question is asking you to do. So I think this high scoring response here is actually quite a good one that's also in the examiner's report. So they sort of started by mentioning that addressing, so focusing on doing something about the HIV AIDS epidemic, could lead to improvements in health and well-being, as well as they chose SDG for quality education. So it's important to name, obviously, the other SDG that you're going to focus on in your answer. And so then they went through, and you'll see throughout this answer here, they were able to link, okay, multiple sources together. So they talked about here in the second sentence that the HIV AIDS program must be addressed in order to improve health and well-being, as despite the AIDS-related deaths decreasing over time, so they're referencing that graph in source 1, every minute of every day a girl aged between 15 to 24 years gets HIV in sub-Saharan Africa. So they're linking to source 2 there, okay? And so then they went on to give some examples of how addressing HIV AIDS would help to reduce the spread of communicable diseases, and that was a key feature of SDG 3. And then they also went on to link into source 3, so the HIV AIDS epidemic results in girls being forced to work in the sex industry, which was mentioned in source 3, and then they flipped it around and quickly focused on however addressing that could reduce levels of stress and anxiety for girls, okay, leading to an improvement in their mental health and well-being. So I won't read through the full response, as you can go and have a look at that, but really this response does a good job of linking, okay, between the sources and linking to addressing the HIV epidemic, so doing something about it, so making sure their answers in the correct context, okay, and linking into key features not only of SDG 3, but SDG 4, quality education. Okay, so hopefully you found that video useful. Just a reminder, the Health Resources Hub YouTube channel has over 50 videos available, so please subscribe. The ACE HHE exam preparation sessions, my social media links there, and also email. Thanks so much.